The scene we're going to work on today is this forest scene, which I know is something a lot of people are challenged by because there's so much details in terms of the foliage. Everything looks so green and yellow, but it's actually quite light. So there are quite a lot of highlights here we need to watch out for. The most difficult thing in this painting is to capture the glow around the tree trunk. Yes, it's easy and hard at the same time, and I will explain why, and you'll hopefully be able to understand what I mean. Let's get started with drawing this. So I actually think we'll go with what we have here, not take any real artistic changes. Maybe I moved it a little subconsciously up, I don't know, but that's going to be our line. Okay, so we're going to get started. Everything starts with a line. Take your time. Now, here's the part where a lot of people have trouble with, and I'm going to show you already in the drawing stage how to deal with it, which is the tree line at the back. Okay, now the thing with people is they really fall into the trap of trying to draw each and every single detail. Now, when I look at it, I just see the outline of the trees. So let me show you what I see. I see this kind of a tall tree here, and then it goes a little lower, then it goes a little back up, kind of dips here, goes a little back like that, goes lower, lower, and a little up. So that's going to be the edge of the shape you see in the background, separating the trees from the sky. This is where the super strong highlight is going to be. I'm going to show you how to deal with it. It's actually simpler than you think in some cases. But this is it for the back. I don't need much more than that because I'm going to treat it like that. I'm going to treat it as one big shape. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. I will go over everything and read. Joanna says it's like a ditch that runs through the city. Okay, that's cool. That's a very interesting name. Cansanoia. I do wonder how you pronounce it. I don't think you mentioned it, so I'll see later on if you did. Now, the trees. This is where you really want to figure out a good composition. Let me show you. What you always want to do is, at least when you get started, avoid patterns. So don't put the trees like this, all perfectly distanced. Okay, that's what you want to avoid. By the way, do you see the pencil? This is all it has left, so I'm really using it up till the end. You want to avoid these equal distances. So as you can see, there's one major tree kind of to the right third, and then there's another major tree. There's one that's really close to us. Then there's another major one, but I'm not going to place it in the third. I'm going to move it a little to the left, okay? And then look at the distance between these two to hint at where to place the next tree. Should you place it right here in the middle? Go a little to the right. Then look at this distance. Always work a little off center. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do it right here. So we'll get started with the biggest tree, the one that's closest to us, and the base is somewhere around here. And then it goes up like this. And don't worry, once I finish the drawing, I will go back and look at some of your questions. So this is one tree, and it's really prominent. It's really in front of us. Now let me go ahead and get rid of these pencil lines to really show that this tree is here. Now it's a little too thick, but that's fine because I don't have to paint it as thick as I did it here. I can go a little thinner. Okay, now another tree going to be around here. Now I did pull this one a little to the right, not even a third. So for this one, I'll just place it where I see it. Now look at the base. The base is to the left, closer to the left side. It's kind of midway between this distance. So I'm going to place it here, put this here. You don't always have to run away from middles. Okay, it's fine. Some things are in the middle. Now it's a little more at a distance, which is why I'm going to make it thinner. Okay, so I just looked at the chat for a moment. Yeah, okay, we're good. We're good. I'm going to have to start placing people as admins just so that I don't have to worry about the chat messages. We have 84 people in the house. Thank you so much. We are painting this beautiful forest scene. If you just joined, it's going to be a really fun one. So we have another tree. Now, should we put one dead in the center? No, let's avoid that. So let's put one here, which is the next prominent one. Now, do try and vary the vertical length as well. Okay, so if there's a tree here, this line, go off of that a bit. So one, let's see, towards here, smaller because it is farther. And again, remember, size is a great indicator of distance as well. You want to pay attention to that. Let's use the smaller eraser very gently because this eraser can be a little more aggressive with the paper's texture. As long as you're gentle, it should work. I know a lot of people have this problem, but So they use kneaded eraser as I recommend, but you can use this one as well. Okay, so we got a bunch of trees here. Let's get these two in the middle. They're kind of in the middle, but not really. So the middle of the scene, and this is like the worst way of measuring, is kind of around here. So I'm going to put them off center again. And we're going to have one, look at the direction. One goes to the right. See this? And another one goes to the left slightly. And that's a really nice kind of way of varying it up. The base is a little bigger here. And yeah, we got it. Now, look at what we've got. We've got a nice little zigzag pattern going that really works well in kind of pulling our eye through the painting. And we want to continue preserving that. Now, if you will notice, these distances are kind of equal. So let's try and break it up with the next one. Instead of placing it here, maybe let's place it closer, okay? And the base is a little taller than this, so somewhere around here. See? That's how I break these patterns. And it's thinner because it's more in the distance. And we have a bunch more trees. So I'm just going to put them in real quick. There's one here. Because I think hopefully most people understood what I mean by the distancing so far. So I think that's good. We're going to place one more around here at the back. And let's give this one a bit of an angle outwards. Like so. And I am missing something, but I think it's going to work out well. I'm missing a bunch of trees, of course, but I'm not talking about that compositionally speaking. I want to break off that pattern that really leads us in. So I brought this back here a little. So it's kind of a zigzag that way too. So kind of like an M letter, if you will. Now, one thing we still haven't added is the cast shadows. So I'm going to place them in and we'll see how the composition works for us. So the cast shadows take this pattern of this is the light source somewhere here. And everything goes outwards from that. So this tree gets this kind of a shadow. Okay. And this tree gets this kind of a shadow. And this tree gets this kind of a shadow. Now, one thing to have in mind when you're doing these shadows is the shadows are going to determine the shape of the surface on which they cast. So if the ground is uneven, we're going to see this unevenness in the shadow. So don't just go with straight lines. You can break it off a bit. See, kind of like, well, I got the direction. You know what the direction is? I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it because I moved the trees a bit. So I need to account for that. So this is going to be like this. And you see it's kind of a wavy shadow line indicating there's a bump on the ground or something like that. Okay, and you want to pay attention to these things. It's really important. Another cast shadow here. Another cast shadow there. Another one goes in that direction. Another one here. Another one there, and get a variety going if you can. Another one here. Now, aside from these cast shadows, we do have a couple of kind of random shadows from the treetops. So that's another thing you want to pay attention to, and mostly here it's on this left side. I'm going to place like this kind of a shadow, and I want to be clear about where I'm going to put it. So it's going to go like this, come back a bit, then go like that. And it may have some holes in it, okay? And now on the right, we do have that same kind of a thing going. So we have this shadow here, and this is going to be a nice little gap. And then here. And we'll wing it, but the general area is here, okay? This is kind of a cast shadow from multiple different, trees that are in the far distance. I didn't draw each and every tree. I can add them later on. Remember, I don't have to even see them in order to add them. Now, there is a bit of a foliage up there, so let's do this. Here you can see a bit of the foliage of the tree. So I'm going to place it in one big shape. Don't draw individual leaves, okay? One big shape. It's actually behind the tree, so let's get rid of this. And I know there are a bunch of questions. I'm going to address them in just a moment, okay? A bunch of foliage over here. Preserve the big shapes, okay? Like that, okay? And I think we're good to go. There are obviously a couple of details on the trees, like these kinds of leaves. We're going to save these for later because they're going to confuse us when we look at this and we look for simplicity in how we draw it, okay? One more thing I want to pay attention to is this line. It's not straight, so let's break it off a bit. And I'll like this, go down a bit, and then go up. Same on the other side. Right now I'm feeling that I missed some shadows right in the middle, so I'm going to place another tree, I think here dead in the center, using a different pencil without even noticing. we're going to have another one here because I want that, see that stronger shadow here. I want that. Make it a little thicker here to close off this gap. I don't know why it felt like the right thing to do. And I do see a couple of shadows I wanted to put in here. There's one shadow here going around this way that I'll probably try and put in. There are a couple of smaller shadows as well, so why not place them in? So you basically want to just look at the light part sky, this very light foliage, the light ground, and kind of avoid all the rest. And this is what we're going to do. Let's get started. This isn't necessarily an easy scene. I'm going to do my best. If I mess it up, you'll forgive me, because this is really... Painting watercolor is always a surprise. By the way, look at how clean the water is. This is probably the cleanest water I've ever had in a YouTube video, at least in the last, I don't know, year or so. So here we go. I'm going to start dipping into that some yellow, okay? Now, I do want, I'm going to dig in a bit, find the pure yellow. Here we go. So that's relatively clean. I'll probably, on second thought, work around that highlight of the sky. So I'm going to do wet and wet here, like that. Okay? I'm going to leave this part white. See? Just decided spontaneously to do that. So this is what we'll do. I'm just going to paint where there is something, but I'm going to avoid this white light patch. Okay? Now, I'm starting with yellow because green has yellow in it, as we know. And because of the angle, the slight angle my paper is at, things won't go above that tree line that I put, for the most part. The paint is going to move down, okay? Now, these trees are still incredibly light, so you want to really pay close attention and not go too dark. I'm kind of pushing it very slowly to see where I get. And as we do this, we can start injecting some blue. So I'm going to pick up a bit of this blue I have here, which I like. It's a kind of natural one. I think it's French ultramarine. And I'm just going to put a bit of it here. Okay. Now I do have this handy spray gun that I can just spray some water on it. We're going to keep the colors fairly natural. So just a bit of blue, a bit of yellow, like so. Now, if you want a stronger green, you can reach to one of these, like this Viridian kind of green. Actually works really well with yellow ochre, because if you notice, the lower section of the trees is a little darker too, so I'm kind of trying to build it up as I go along. See, like that. And we get this nice little gradual transition here. And then I'm going to start pulling things onto the ground. Now, the ground is, again, very light, same as the foliage in the background. So you really want to pay close attention to that. Okay, so here we go. Keeping it fairly light. Now I'm not doing wet and wet because remember I did not pre-wet this area. Okay, but I'm still keeping it fairly loose and light. In fact, let's purify it with a bit of a pure yellow. The angle makes sure the water moves down so I don't get too many cauliflowers or backgrounds or stuff like that. Things keep moving down that way. Now the temptation is to go a little stronger here with the yellow, but remember this part of the ground is very light, so don't do that. I have that temptation, so I'm going to avoid it. Okay. Scrolling down a bit just to see your comments. Now one thing I still haven't used at all here is red. And I will do that. I will show you how I do that as well. So instead of darkening this middle section that's fairly light, I'm going to use more yellow on the outsides here because they're a little darker. Okay, so I can kind of afford it here. Like that. Now, don't think necessarily about where you place your lines. Think about it compositionally, where it would make sense. For me, it's the edges of the painting. You don't have to stick to the pencil lines you put. Okay, just one thing to note. Again, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Now, I may have gone too light here. That's fine. That's fine. We'll attend to this area again later on. Now, let's add in a bit of red. So this is one of my favorites, red here, and I'm fine with it mixing with my yellow. In fact, it should. Just because I do like to have all primary colors show in my work. So I'm going to place a bit of red. In fact, I'm going to go over this tree trunk with a bit of that same red. We can maybe go above other tree trunks. I promised I'll show you the sheen. So if you take a look here, see, big parts of this painting are starting to dry. Not much sheen here. So we have to be careful. Okay, let's put a bit more red here, and let's use this a bit just to get things to keep flowing. Put a bit of stronger red there just for to add some interest. I sometimes like to do that kind of a thing. Let's do the same with the strong red to this tree maybe here. See? Some of these trees can get a bit of a stronger treatment there. And I think this scene is pretty much, this session is pretty much, we can take a break. So let's continue with the next wash. Now, strategy. We have a couple of things to cover here. One of the main things is I do want to darken the bottom of these parts of the foliage, because it is darker than here. Like, if you look at this section right here, you see a nice clean transition from dark to light. This is lighter than this. And this is what I want to put an emphasis on. So I think I'll go at it in an interesting way. I do want to pre-wet, and I also want to spray. So let's see what we can get here. I'm going to try a few things I don't usually do, a few ways of working that I don't always adhere to, really. And yeah, it's fully dry. So I'm going to pre-wet this area right down to the base where the ground is, okay, basically. So here we go, just pre-wetting some of these areas between the trees, trying to keep some of the trees not wet. And then I'm going to use some of this water sprayer to further wet some areas. Now the sides are going to be kept quite dark, darker than they are right now, which is the main reason I'm doing this. So I'm going to start by mixing this green from my yellow and blue. Okay, and that's kind of that. And I'm going to place it in here, in those gaps. Okay, now this is where you can really play around with wet and wet and really enjoy yourself. You see? And it's not going to go above this line because, again, gravity. And I also pre-wet some areas, not all of them. Okay? And let's get some, look at how wet it is. I want you to really see it. Okay? See? I pre-wet some areas, and hopefully you can see it well. The most important part is to stop here so that there is this nice contrast of light and dark. Now, sometimes I will put in some more individual colors, so a little more yellow maybe towards the middle, just because I want to. No special reason for that, really. And then a bit more here. I should also go like this, and maybe add a bit of even red to some sections here. Now I do want to make sure these follow the same line, so let me straighten it out, kind of like that. Here as well. Around the trees, around some of the trees at least. And the sides are also a little, this other side is also a little darker, so here we go. Now I'm fine with some hard edges, in fact. It could lead to a nice variety, so I can pull this up a bit more here on the sides maybe. But generally what I want to do is get a clear transition from slightly dark to lighter, okay? So I think that works out nicely, and I can pull it a little higher here. It's funny how some scenes are a big challenge to talk and paint at the same time, and some aren't. I don't really know why. Like this one, for some reason, I find much harder to do both. So here we go. A little darker around this side here. Like that. Maybe get the bottom section to be a little darker on some of these. And you don't have to avoid the trees. You can go over them. It's not the end of the world, actually. I just chose to do that anyway. Now, the sides. This is what I want to direct your attention. There are shadows here. So let's continue this wash and continue over to the shadows. Okay? Now, the shadows are pretty dark green. And they're not as muted. So let me add this kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it again, viridian, something like that. And I'm just going to continue with this wash. Pull it downwards. Kind of drop the brush, never mind. Go beyond that separation on some areas on the side, okay? So something like this, then like that. Some cast shadows from random trees, like this. And this is where the principle of merging shapes together really comes into play, because you want to make sure you combine this, you help this move. And I'm going to wet this again here. Help this shape move onto the foreground or whatever it is. Okay, we have a pretty strong shadow here. So let's get some more paint in here. And I'm going to get the trees in just a moment, so don't worry about these. I do want to get this nice little shape of light and shadow here, okay? So you see, the painting kind of dictates where you work. Because I wanted to move this wash a little more down, kind of made me go there, even though I wasn't planning on going there now. So you have to sometimes allow for spontaneity to kick in. I'm gonna blend some of these edges here by spraying over them, because you see they are quite soft in the reference. And then I'm gonna do the same on the other side. I'm gonna start pulling in some lines from the trees right around here. And I don't want the colors to be that different, so let me put a bit of green into that again. Now let me put a bit more yellow into this and a bit more blue. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see. This goes here. Then we have a bunch of these kind of lines coming out from the shadowy area. The main point here is to merge it with the sides that are fairly dark, okay? It's still not technically officially the shadows cast by the trees. We will tackle these again later on, okay? But I do want to show you how it's kind of important to merge while you can, merge the shapes while you can, especially from the sides, okay? So I think we're gonna allow this a few moments to dry. So I'm gonna mix a bit of a more muted green here. I'm gonna start putting in the tree details up top. Now again, a lot of people have trouble with this. Not like how do I get all the leaves in, how do I get the shapes to look right. Basically, you don't have to have the shape look perfect, or rather you don't have to paint every individual leaf. It's just about the edges of the shape. So let me show you. So I'm just going to put in this shape here for the foliage, and then as long as I have a couple of things that look like leaves around it, that's pretty much enough, okay? So I'm just worried about the contour lines around the shape, okay? Kind of like that. We have some of those coming from the left here, like this. And I'm gonna add something really nice in a moment, and I think you'll like it. Let's vary it a bit with a bit of blue. This scene is challenging. Like, I actually am being challenged at the moment. It's not easy, right? I really have to think about how to do things effectively and efficiently and not mess it up too much. Now this tree does have a few very clear foliage on it, so I'm just going to add it in right now. See these small dots? They really help to establish some kind of a foliage. Now one trick I want to show you. You grab the brush that I dropped on the floor. So let's get it. You grab something like a sword brush or a rigger brush, get some paint, and then what you do is you can get a couple of branches in while it's still wet, and it can really enhance the look of it. See? Kind of like this, very thin kind of lines. It can really help it look like trees and foliage. And I am taking my time because I'm just working on one section, okay? There is no hurry. What is important is that the closer I get to this area with the sunlight, I'm really gonna stop, okay? Make things a little lighter. And I will show you a couple of very interesting things here. Okay, so what you do see is some branches, but they're very light and very yellowy almost. So let me show you. I want to get those in now because I'm already dealing with the branches. So keeping things fairly light, I'm going to put those in. You see here all of these small leaves? You have to go a little lighter when you're close to that light source, okay? And I may even have to go a little lighter than what I already did. So you see here, all of these small branches, they're super light. I need to keep them very, very light, okay? Barely visible, actually. Like this, like that. The closer we get to this part, it's very strongly sunlit. We may have to darken this a bit. We'll see about that later on. But in any case, now we get to the foliage on the right side. So I'm going to start putting that in. And notice how I switched brushes, not only for functionality, but remember, you always have the option of switching brushes to use different colors and not to mix them. Okay, so that's another important thing to have in mind. You can actually use brushes to your advantage this way. So you don't have to clean constantly and, you know, do all these things that take time and take focus away. So here we go. A bunch of leaves here are enough to tell the story. I don't want to go too detailed here. Let's connect this side section here. And it's funny how that's how it is with watercolor. You always get started with, that's how I like to do it, a light to dark. And so before you put in the final shapes, it always looks a little awkward. But bear with me, stick through this. I know that's many people have this problem of feeling like they messed up the painting. In truth, they just haven't finished them. So yeah, just letting you know that. And yeah, I think we're good in that regard. We can actually start working on the tree trunks. Now, here's how I'm going to paint them. I'm going to start with a tree trunk, and then I'm going to connect it to the shadow in one go. There's no need for a separation. Now, if you really look at the reference photo carefully, you will notice something interesting. The shadows are kind of a darker iteration of the green, while the tree trunks are a little brown, a little red. So that's an important distinction to get. You want to make sure that you make that separation. It will help to better notice where the tree ends and it turns into a cast shadow. And it will feel like a part of the ground. It will just enhance it overall. So veer towards the warmer in the tree trunks and towards the cooler, greener on the ground. Now, one more thing. Look at, and I'm going to make the reference photo larger so you can really notice it. Look at the trees that intersect here with here. The trees that are in this area, they're very light. It's almost like, again, the light pours through the foliage and lights them up. So you want to pay attention to that, okay? Now, one thing I did mess up, I'll try to correct now and we'll see how it goes, is this should be much cooler. I should have kept this cool blue all throughout. So let me try and glaze over it with a bit of blue. Maybe we can mute it a bit, okay? Just noticing it now. This should be much cooler and more muted, okay? Kind of like that. It'll just lead to a much better color harmony. Not necessarily color harmony, but a sense of depth, okay? So if you do want to make sure you get some sense of depth, keeping this part behind, that's the way to do it, okay? Now, again, we're really taking this all the way to the edge, working around those darker shapes. I know it's weird. Sometimes I put them right in together with some other shadows, but I want to keep them for less. And you will see, okay? You will see it all connect. Now, I'm going to start by looking at my palette and mixing the right value, hopefully, and the right color. So I'm going to get started with a bit of yellow, a bit of red, okay? And then I'm going to add to that a bit of blue. What I want to mix is kind of a, and I have a test paper here, it's kind of a brown, okay? This is actually really close to what I need. I just need more of it and for it to be darker. You want what you put for the trees to not stick out too much in the style I'm working, okay? You can do whatever you want, but for me personally, I really like when there is a bit of everything in it. So I want the trees to also have a bit of the green and a bit of the other colors around that. So basically more red, more blue and more yellow and not just red, okay? That's the main part. And you can also use red and a bit of that viridian if you want to mix mix faster. So I'm going to just get some more water, get some more yellow, and you slowly recreate that mix. So now it's yellow. Let's add a bit of red. Now it's kind of orange. Let's add a bit of blue. See, that's how it works. And then finally you have something similar to the color you wanted. Now I'm going to get started with this tree here on the left. You don't want to go too dark, okay? Because these trees are not black, actually. You want to really pay attention to that. So I'm going to get started here. Now light comes from the right, so if I'm going to leave a highlight at all, it's going to be on the right side for this tree. Okay, so here I go. And you'll see how this slowly puts the painting into context. Okay, while I'm at it, I want to take this smaller brush and start pulling out a couple of branches. Why? Because I see them. Okay, see a couple of stray branches that come out of this tree trunk. So here we go. Now, one more thing to remember, don't go the same color. Add a bit of interest to it. So add a bit of blue here. See? Just a touch. Let's turn this into an unevenness in the tree because I don't want any highlights to the left, okay? You see how much interest just switching over to this slightly bit of blue does? Now I'm going to add a bit of red. I'm struggling to narrate what I do because I try to work as fast as necessary and still narrate everything, so just sorry about that. So here we go, and look at this tree. It's got everything, really. It's got a bit of orange, it's got a bit of blue, a bit of red. Looks really, really good. And the trees are where it's really going to shine in that regard, okay? So here we go. Got to the bottom. I'm going to add a bit more blue to the bottom because it does seem a little darker and wider. as well. The base of the tree is wide. So here we go. And then I'm going to pull out the shadow from it. Now the shadow is lighter than the tree trunk, interestingly enough. So I'm going to keep it light. Bit of viridian there. And this is a shadow within a shadow too. So kind of going a little lighter maybe. A bit more water, I feel like. And help this paint move. So keeping it light. And that's one tree. All we have to do now is really just repeat. This is really all we have to do. I can use this opportunity to place in some more shadows that I already see here. Because I do see this left section. I'm not trying to really follow the reference to a T, but I do see there's a bit more darkness to that left section, in fact. A bit more shadows here. I changed a lot of them up, but that's fine. And maybe even some unevenness in the ground that we can use this opportunity to place in. And you see how it starts to take the impression of a ground, kind of like that. Maybe even more viridian to it, like this. Just helps to cement it to the ground, hopefully. Okay? And I think that's good for now. Let's continue with the trees, and then at the end we'll see if there's actually something serious to add. Now, one thing you will notice is with my painting, the tree and the contrast between the tree and the background is bigger. If you look at the painting itself, the background is a little darker. Okay? One thing to pay attention to, it's not the end of the world if this stays this way. I can darken the background, I can lighten the trees if I choose to. This is going to be the darkest tree anyway because it's kind of to the side, so I can go a little lighter in the middle. Okay, so don't worry about that too much. Let's get the other tree to its left. For this one, it's thinner because it's farther. And I'm going to keep the theme of adding a bit of blue to my mix just because I really like the way it looks and it neutralizes it, which is nice. And I'm going to keep this one a little lighter. Okay, just a little bit lighter than the previous one here. See, like that. That way I don't create too stark of a contrast on this left section here. And then we're going to get the shadow cast by the tree here with a bit of everything really. And place it in like that. And let's break this, let's close this gap. We don't need it. It's just, there's no use for it anyway. Yeah. And maybe let's put a bit of darker blue here. Because the tree trunks, you will notice, appear to look a little darker. The tree trunks and the shadow that's right next to them. You can actually add a bit of this blue to different spots if they're still wet. Okay, this isn't really wet anymore. Just a bit. We have to stop. Okay, so we got another detailing. Let's continue. Let's continue actually with some of the prominent trees. Okay, because this is where the magic happens. Look at these trees in the middle. They're very affected by the sunlight, as I mentioned before. So these sections are going to be light, golden, very light. Okay, and then the more you go down, the darker it gets. So we really have to pay close attention to it when we're doing it. Okay, so I'm really trying to see and figure out what it should look like. And let's get to it. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, this one. Don't need a big one for this. And I'm going to mix this slightly warm but still neutral color here. And very light. Okay, I'm still keeping it light. Use your test paper if you're unsure of the value. A bit more water, that's more like it. A bit more yellow, that's more like it. And let's see what we got here. This is good, this will work. I'm just going to get started. So, I'm going to start light. See? This is fairly light. And it's fairly wet. You can see this if I go like this. See how it shines in the light? That's because it's light. And so we'll continue like that. And then as we move downwards is where we'll start placing in the slightly darker values. You see? Like this. But very gradually, and it's nothing immediate really. And then we'll add a bit of the blue. There are some gaps here, don't worry about them. We can fix them later or not, that's fine. And get the tree base to be a little wider, because I think it looks better. And you see we got that tree in, starting fairly light and going a little darker. Let's get that beautiful cast shadow, a bit more viridian here, because it's a bit more in the light. A bit more yellow. And we'll get it in like that. Uneven, because remember the ground is uneven. See? Then if you want to make it kind of prettier, you can add a bit of a texture to it if you want to, kind of like that. But I think that works nicely. And you see the subtle transition from kind of yellow to brown to green. If we do that for all of the trees, we'll get something nice looking. So here we go, continuing with the theme of the lighter tree trunks, starting with a very, very light yellow here, and slowly working our way towards slightly darker browns and reds, a little thick. Got rid of some water on the brush. Here we go, like that. All the way down to the shadow, where I'll add a bit of blue and make it a little darker. And then pull the shadow out of it, maybe with this, together with some yellow. You want the cast shadows to have kind of a similar color, just to get a good impression going. You don't want them to be starkly different. Okay, we have a guest. Come here, Ruth. Come say hi to the fans. It's too bad I don't have treats. Keeping this almost more yellowy. Starting light. Very, very light. The only challenge with starting very light is that the watery wash can sometimes move a lot to the sides and bleed very easily out of the shape you're working on. So just something to be aware of. Not necessarily, you can't really always do something about it. Just work a little carefully. And maybe I'll get this a little stronger. We can always glaze. If something feels too light, you can always glaze over it. Don't worry about it. Again, I'm putting blue into my yellow well. That's not good. Okay, here we go. And continuing with this cast shadow. Like that. We do have this kind of an unevenness in the ground, so let's put that in. A bit of dry brush. Never hurts for the ground texture. See? Like that. And we're continuing. Hopefully at the end we'll have something that looks good here. Hoping for the best, let's say. So here, let's start. I think this is light enough. Just not as golden. Yeah, that's good. That's actually going to work. Continuing with the tree trunk, going a little. Let's use this red ochre. Oh, maybe a bit of this red after all. A bit darker near the bottom. Keep those tree trunks uneven if possible. Just makes them look a little better. Like so. And then transitioning to a bit of a darker green, I must say. Or no, I'm just imagining things. This is still quite a light cast shadow. Just want to make sure it's, again, the same color as the previous ones. Should be lighter. Like that. Here we go. Forgot to make the trunk a little wider near the base, so let's do that now. Kind of like this. Here as well, I think it'll help. Like that. Let's make it a little darker. I just had an insane deja vu. I just had like a crazy one just this second. You know how it just pops out of nowhere? So I just had it right now. Okay. And you see how these trees really are light against the sunlight that's pouring in. That's a big part of the effect, really. It's not the best. I will make some improvements to it. It's going to look a little better when we're done. I do need to kind of pick up the pace here. Let's put this tree trunk while we're at it. Multiple ones, and then go back to our beautiful green. Like that. It's connected to this shadow here. Got a bit of a grassy texture going here and there. Yeah, that works. Get it a little darker near the base, I think, like that. Just so that it's more prominent against the background. And yeah, that works. That works nicely. We have this tree trunk on the right. It's a little wider and a little more muted, I think. So, but still light. We want to start light up top. And by the way, sorry if I move the camera a bit. Hope you can still see everything. So still light, like that. Then the more you move down, the more you're going to take with you more paint. Make it a little darker with every step of the way. Add a bit of warmth to it with a bit of red here. Maybe let's, for this one, add a couple of stray branches just to make it look better. Got a bit of a background there. That's fine. That sometimes happens without really doing anything. So a bit of these branches going off, because this one is in a pretty prime location in the middle. I think it can really just make it look a little better. If you have some of these, and I do see them, by the way, in the reference photo, some of these stray tree branches, and then get a bit of blue in there. I like that. Like this, bit more green and yellow. And we can drop that cast shadow here, a little thicker probably. Like that. Maybe like this. Then we have this pretty big, let me get some more wet and wet here. This is a pretty prominent tree. We're gonna do this same thing for this one. So we have another tree here. This one I really want to think about. So how do I want to approach it? I'm gonna get started with a bit of warmth, I think, because it is a pretty prominent one again. So this is our opportunity to use some colorfulness and really bring it together. So let's get started with this kind of a thing, and then continue adding a bit more warmth to it. So kind of like this. Now here's where I want to start showing some individual colors. First, let's keep the wash going, fairly merged, like that. See? It creates a nice sense of depth because it's a little darker than the background. Now here, let's start putting in some pure paint. So we have some pure red here. It's going to go a little crazy with this tree, and we'll see what happens. Then a bit of cleaner blue, like that. Drop it all the way down. Let's get this branch that goes up a little, like that. I don't know if it makes sense, but hopefully it does. And get a bit of a wider base going here. And ultimately a cast shadow here. So see, so that's a very prominent tree. So I'm starting to observe the whole thing as a whole, and I'm starting to figure out where I do need to or may need to make some changes. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. I think this line should actually be lower, but I don't know if I want to fix that yet, if at all. Let's continue with the trees, putting some more of them. We have another close one here, so let's get this kind of a same mix we have similar. Maybe just a little lighter and a little bluer for this one. Because it's at the edges, we don't need the yellow really anymore. In fact, this is a couple of trees. There we go. Got a few for one. Like this, and a very gentle cast shadow within the shadow. Kind of like that. So that looks good. And I'm just going to pop in a few more trees where I see them. This one here. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush in a moment. And yeah, sorry that I can't really stop and actually read what you're saying. Just needs a lot of concentration for this part. So here we go. And for the trees that are a little further, they actually feel warmer for some reason. But I'm going to stick to my guns and work with this bit of a neutral bluish kind of mix. So we have a few of these that are still close. That. We have another one. You know what? Now let's start getting these to be lighter. I do see some that are lighter in the back, so let's do that. Because I'm missing like a million trees in the background. So like this. Another one here. Again, these are more at the back, so a little hazier. this. Just adding as many of these as you see fit. And I think we're pretty good on that front. So what I'm going to do now is take a few steps back and see what I would change here, because there are a few things I may change. I will add some texture to these two trees and get them darker at the same time. This line, let's see here. This tree should go down a little more, actually. I don't know if it's that important, but it should. So here we go. Like that. I do see some sections that have a clearer separation between light and shadow in terms of the background. I will make that clearer as well. And quite possibly, I will darken some sections here behind the trees to make this part look a little lighter. So I'm taking a few steps back, and I actually like the way it looks. But as always, some improvements are due. One of them is this still doesn't feel bright enough. How do you get it to be brighter? You darken some areas around, okay? You go a little darker here, a little darker here, a little darker here, making this really pop. One more thing. The ground here, there are some clearer transitions from light to dark. So here I need to fix it, make it a little darker up top to make the separation. I don't have to, but I think I will. And the ground details, of course. There's so much going on here on the ground, and a lot other cast shadows I still haven't put in. So we'll do that as well. And I think with that we'll be done. But look, already we have a very nice color harmony, and I think a good sense of light and shadow. Let's do that. I'm going to bring in a few delineations or separations between the trees here at the back and the ground. Okay. Everything you're going to do in watercolor, and painting in general, will involve some risk. So yes, we are risking some things by doing this. And I may find that it was better before that. So just letting you know, it's part of it. But I do feel like it's quite an important part, so let's do that. Let's make a better separation between the lights and darks. Here especially, it's required, I think. Like that. Making this light a little straighter. And I think that's enough for that kind of a thing. Let's spray a bit, help this move, blend some edges here. But still, I do want this to be a little darker. And let's make this line a little more organized. Like this. And I think that's better. That's actually significantly better, because now we really see the difference between the ground and the trees. So that's one thing. Focal point. Okay, to make this lighter, we're going to add some darker neutral details. Now, I don't want to go overworked, and I want to contrast, so I'll keep them cool. So let's see what I can do here. I'm going to put in a couple of shapes for maybe leaves from tree trunks, stuff like that. That will hopefully make it a little darker here up top. And these have to be super light, okay? Really, really light. Probably a little lighter than what I have here. Now the trick is, how do I do this without overworking it? You're always at a risk, and it's going to be a little more overworked, no matter what you do, by doing this. Okay, so just be aware. It's fine. Let's connect it to some trees, some actual trees here. Okay. So that's for the left section. Now let's do a bit of that on the right as well. Kind of like this. Again, at the risk of going overworked, but the risk on the other end to me is more severe, and that is wondering what would have been if you would have made some changes. Could it be better? I think it already looks better. I think the light already shines a little more clearly. Okay, so yeah, that works for me. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stop now with that. Now, I did say I want to add a couple of details to these trees here, and I think they're dry enough to do that. So We have a lighter focal point, we have the transition, and we have the tree and the ground details. So let's put in a couple of details onto the trees. I'm going to use a dry brush, kind of like you would with windows and stuff like that in buildings, doing the same thing onto the trees here, okay? Because you do see some of their texture. So let's see what I got here on my brush. Yeah, that's good. That'll work, I think. Maybe a bit more of everything. It's really tricky to get the right consistency of dry brush. My advice would be to really carefully look at how I mix here. Always when you look at tutorials, see how the person mixes on the palette. That's where the real lessons are learned. And here we go. So a couple of straight lines, top to bottom, to really give a sense of the tree bark texture. That's what it's all about, like that. Don't need too much of it. That's enough. Now on the other side here, be a little gentler because it's smaller, thinner, farther in the distance. I think that's actually good enough for texture. You do see some non-vertical lines, some more horizontal line pulls. These are barely going to be noticeable, but it's still important to have them. So you won't consciously think to yourself, oh, these details, without them, the painting wouldn't have been the same. You won't think that consciously, but the viewers will recognize it on a subconscious level, okay? Which is why you want to have them here. So that's that. This is getting to be quite a long demo, actually. But hopefully you're still enjoying it. And now, ground details. So we have so much going on here on the ground that I'll just get started. Strategy. Not sure. To be honest, not sure. I think my strategy is going to be to look around, find shapes that I'm missing, and adding them in. So let's start here. There's a major cast shadow here that I missed. Just did not put in. So here we go. It's here. A bunch of other smaller shadows. I would actually want to move this line downwards, but I don't know if it's worth the risk. Let's try. Let's try moving it. Making it a little lower compositionally, I think, would work better. Here we go. Taking some strategic risks. Hopefully strategic and not just dumb risks. Something that bugged me a while ago, and I don't know why I postponed it so much, but here we go. A bit of a hill there. I think that's a little better. Now, a bunch of these small texture touches. And these are all the bumps that you see here, because you see a bunch of bumps and different shapes on the ground. So that's how you get those in. Have some longer ones and then some that are smaller and individual. You don't want to just put tons of dots. That's one thing to avoid. You want to connect some of these together. So longer ones, you see? Like that. And slowly what this does is build the feeling that this is ground we're looking at. But we still have that pretty major, I guess, shadows in the foreground. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch to this brush. I'm going to add a bit of Viridian. This is going to be really the risk. I really have to think about what I'm going to do now. Let's mute this a bit. I need something that's similar to these greens, slightly muted. So a bit of everything, really, and a bit of green. I think that's good to go. Do I want to do this? Do I want to make these shadows a little stronger? Now I'm having second thoughts. A little more green. Because I don't fully see what I want to do. If I add a cast shadow here, all the way down to there, and then connect it here, like that. You know what, let's just do it. I know I need to do something here, so let's just put something confident. See, that's much better. I had a feeling it'll work. And then here we need another kind of a hill area, something like that. It actually works. I had a feeling I need this kind of a thing here. Just to, I don't know, kind of grab everything together, I guess. This is a little too strong though, so let's do this. And let's do this. What is it that we're painting right now? I think it's shadows from the treetops and leaves and all of that, but it just felt like I have to break all of this monotony. Let me see it in the monitor and figure out where I want to take it. So I think the sense of light and shadow is a lot better now. I do think it needs a little more of a bright green, I guess. I don't know why it feels like that. Around here too, kind of like that. I don't know if I'm going crazy, but I'm just seeing some stuff that I want to add, so might as well add them in. Yeah, I don't know. I think that looks good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some of these tree trunks darker. I feel like that's one thing that will make them pop a bit. This is good. This is good. I'll probably go for some of the center ones. I just want to get them to be a little more visible. Okay, so now we're in the realm of small corrections. This isn't really earth-shattering. I'm not going to change anything too significantly. These are small corrections that will hopefully make the painting look a little better. Okay, so here we go, darkening the tree trunk a bit more water. Especially near the bottom is where I want to darken these. And then I can actually use some paper towels to move it a bit. Let's get this section a little darker, this as well. Here as well. This is important. All of these small trees that aren't as visible, I want to make them more visible. Add some cast shadows too, some of them. Like that. More blue, I think. Just to get some of these to really show. Here we go. I think that's much better, actually. You see now it feels like a contrast between the light and dark. That's much better. What I'm going to do is lift a bit, okay? We're going to lift like 1 or 2 sun rays coming through the branches. That's always a nice effect. It's not that strong, to be honest, here. There is a bit of it, though. So here's how you do that. What you want to do, I'm going to flip it. I'll show you why, because I need to move my hand in that direction. And I'm going to wet this thin line here. And you can see it in the light, maybe. I don't know if you can see it, because it's not wet enough. Let me go over it again. If I can even remember where I placed it. Here we go. Can you see it? Yes. I'm just going to go over it a few times. And kind of scrub it. And then, if I go like this, it should lift it up a bit. So you see we got this kind of a light line going. And that kind of feels like light pouring through. Do this like 5 or 6 or 10 times, and you'll get the effect. So let's do it. Let's do that as kind of a final move. Then I'm going to look at some final messages, and I think we can wrap up today's session. Still have a bunch of work to do, unfortunately, here. Work never ends, but I'm so grateful to actually be able to do this for a living. It's pretty insane. Got to remind myself every day. So I'm going to go like this, you see? Another ray. Let's see here. Let's go over this a few times. Like that. And then we'll lift. It's a bit of a risky move too, by the way. If you're doing a lot of it, it can kind of overpower the painting. So just be sure to, I guess, don't do too much of it. I'm going to do another one closer to the first one here. Like that. That. It's just a very technical thing. You have to go over it a few times. So not necessarily the most fascinating technique to see, but at least it puts some kind of rays through. Now let's put one on the left side. I'm going to use the thin brush again. Just a few of these. We're not going to do too much again. So here we go. I definitely have a lot to learn when it comes to brightness, shine, things like that. Getting those punchy highlights. When it's very obvious in a painting, I'll usually manage to pull it off. Sometimes it's a very subtle impression, and then I won't always be able to get it as bright as the photo reference for sure. Let's do this because I can see where I'm working. So here we go. Yeah, good. Going back and lifting. Should probably use a fresh piece of paper towel for this. But you see, it's just a few of these, very weak, but you can still see the effect, hopefully. So I have an idea. We'll give it a try. We'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I'm going to glaze over some areas with a bit of green, but it's going to be this green, and maybe with a bit of lemon yellow. Let me do this. I'm going to clean up a well, and let's grab some of this. This is a very bright kind of sap green. I know you can barely see it, but here it is. I need it to be very light. I don't want to add even a yellow to it. I think it's yellowy enough. And I'm just going to use that and go over some areas here. So let's do this. Let's see if it maybe gives it a slightly more green tint to it. And if it was the wrong decision, then so be it. Because remember, you have to be willing to experiment. So let's see, maybe it will push it in the right direction. And again, this is just extra what I'm doing right now. Like, I would have generally been pleased with it, but just for the sake of experimentation, let's try hitting it up with some of this stronger green. Now, I know it may seem awkward, but because it's slightly opaque, once it's going to dry, it will look less awkward for the areas that in which it's not like the tree trunks and all of that. I think that looks a little better, actually. So let's go over this section. And let's really consolidate all the major highlights in the middle. So I think it pushed it slightly in the right direction. Thank you, Photoshop, for letting me see the color more cleanly. Yeah. So instead of yellow, maybe I should have gone with this green right out the gate. Let's let it dry a bit, see how it goes. I think it pushed it in the right direction, and hopefully it will still look good by the end of it. You could even add green to some of the distant background trees. Interesting. Yeah, I get it. Let's do that. So really, I think on the top parts, right? Let's give it a try. So maybe here. I don't know if it's because this paint is also a little opaque that it made it feel a little more prominent, and it's not really the color. I don't know. It's a good question. Colors are, again, I'm kind of a value painter. That's the decision I made subconsciously. I really enjoy getting the values and not so much with mimicking the colors. But this is a weakness of mine and something I do want to improve, especially as it relates to getting a feeling of glow. So yeah, admittedly, this is something I should have known to do, let's say. Should have known to use this green instead of the other ones, the other colors I used. But yeah, I think it looks better now. Huh, interesting. We learned something new today. Let me make one small kind of final change, okay? Because we're taking risks already and we're in it. So let me mix a bit of this Viridian green and red, okay? I want to try something. Because now when I look at it, it is a little darker. Ooh, that yellow was a mistake. Way too much yellow. Let's add a bit of everything here. Now I'm using paints, as you've seen, this wasn't a minimal palette painting. This I used everything. Let's start fresh here. Okay, let's see if this is dark enough. So here's the thing. Some of these sections are darker. And I want to make them darker, actually. I want to go like this. And now I don't know why, but I just feel like it'll help a bit. And if it's a mistake, so be it. But I just feel like, yeah, like that. Then I want to move it up a bit. Some of these cast shadows could be, they have some darker sections within them. That's the thing. Let's see, add a bit of Viridian here. I think it will improve the sense of light and shadow. Just a bit. And then here, this has a very nice little zigzag pattern to it. I know this may seem a little crazy what I'm doing right now, but I actually see it in the painting, so Might as well put it in, you see? I don't know why, and there are a couple of, I don't know if it's rocks or just dead trees or tree trunks that are also quite dark. You see what I mean? I don't know if it helped, but it feels like this will improve just a bit of the light in the middle. Kind of like that. I don't know. See, it just gets it to be a little punchier. I could extend this effect. After this, I'm really going to call it done. For discipline's sake, because I thought I'd called it done a long time ago, and at some point you have to stop. But here we go. Just extend this effect a bit here. I know it looks too starking, but don't worry, it will work out. It will look good. Like that. Yeah, that's good. And lastly, just these two, make these a little darker, especially near the bottom, like that. I don't know why, it just seemed like it helped a bit. That's much better. That's really nice. I should get like a new ballpoint pen. So yeah, here we go. We're done. I think it's just all we're left with is removing the tape. I don't want to keep you waiting. We'll do the tape removal, then we'll do some questions and wrap it up. So if you have any now, let me know. So here we go. That's one. And that's two. And this effect works best when it's actually a background painted completely. So I think it will look especially good with this painting. And the last one. And this is done. I really hope you enjoyed this demo. It's been fun. It's been a wild ride. It's been a challenge. But in any case, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I will talk to you again real soon.